I watched their face-to-face, which is basically like our version of the gloves are off in the UK. And he was just basically saying like, there's no way you can beat me. I've trained for a fighter that is 2 times better than you, you know. And he says, no matter what you're gonna do, no matter what you're gonna bring, you're not gonna take my belt. So he already had that mentality that he's prepared for an opponent that was a lot better than him. So he's overtrained in some ways, at least mentally. And he prepared himself for a fight. He prepared himself for a challenge, by preparing for a fighter that was better than him, and he came out victorious. We got Lawrence Coley, who essentially had put a little bit of pressure on himself, actually. So he put pressure on himself, saying he needs to beat the fighter in a particular stage of the fight. So it'll be great if he beats him within 3, satisfied if he beats him within 6, I believe, and disappointed if he, doesn't do that and knocks him out within that time frame. So put a little bit of pressure on himself. And I'm learning about Lawrence that he's a fighter that wants a little bit of pressure on himself, because there's been a few fights now where he's come out and said he's had a bit of nerves, and almost he's converted those nerves eventually in the fight to be, to great victories, and credit to him, he's 11 fights in now, and he's pretty much conquered his country, and so great things are to follow, I'm sure. But that's one thing about him. So he actually is a fighter that puts a little bit of pressure on himself, but he still knows his worth. He knows where he's come from, and he knows where he wants to go to. And so that's one thing you can kind of glean from each fighter, that they have their own different versions and their own methods to actually prepare themselves and enhance their confidence. And Charlie Edwards, I noticed he was saying in the press conference as well. So this is just like their approach before the fight. And he said that he's obsessed with improving. So he said he's improving in his fight or his punches. He's a bit more planted when he punches. And he said that those are things that he has been preparing to improve himself and become a better fighter. And I guess in Charlie's point of view, his way of improving his confidence is by him setting goals that are achievable. Even though he's at the height, he's world champion, he's still setting himself goals for him to achieve and for him to become better and a greater fighter. And so it's for those our athletes, or for those even in their own endeavors. So how can you start improving your confidence? How can you start developing yourself? And one of 3 ways is maybe working by pressure, by setting achievable targets that you work with gradually and become better in what you do. And then you have someone like where you prepare yourself every so often to become better. So, and I'm using Errol Spence Jr. as a reference here. And then Deontay Wilder, goodness gracious. So him and Dominic Brazil, have a bit history here. So he has an agenda against this fighter, and I think they had a little bit of a tiffy last year, and it really got personal. But anyway, Deontay Wilder, his confidence comes from self-talk essentially, and he uses press conferences, he uses interviews, he uses video content, and just any form of media to broadcast this. And when he's in this press conference here, he's looking at Brazil, and he's looking at him and he's saying, I'm gonna punch through you. And he's using examples such as, what's his name from Tekken, Scorpion, like, come over here, I'm gonna punch through you. And he's telling Brazil what he's gonna do to him. He's telling the viewers and telling the spectators he is the best. There's no one else that can match him. His stats suggest it, and he knocks out pretty much every single person he's touched. So he's using self-talk to improve his confidence. And at the same time, what's very interesting is that he's looking at Brazil and he's saying this very aggressively. And there's no way on God's earth that Brazil's looking at this and it just doesn't affect him. Even if it affects him like 2%. The fact that Wilder is so confident, he's taking off his glasses, he's saying it aggressively, he's leaning over, and he's saying it with such belief, and his history suggests that he kind of means what he says. With the exception of Fury, but he did flatten him down. It's due to Fury's quality that stopped him from becoming another victim. But it's hard for Brazil, who has lost as well, to not feel a little bit of intimidation from that. And so that's another way that Deontay Wilder or an athlete can use confidence, is through self-talk, confirming and almost saying things and believing what you're saying, and almost praising yourself in some ways. You know, not many people praise themselves enough, you know, and that's one thing about Deontay Wilder that you have to give to him, and it was really good to see. And Shannon Courtney as well, really entertaining fight on the weekend. She says she boxes like a man, you know, and she she highlights some of the things that her strength. She knows where she's coming from, but the fact she says that is almost saying that she's superior to her peers, you know, and you could actually see that yesterday in the fight. She was really sharp, her movement was great. Every time she punched, she slipped. Like, she had really good habits that is not really common to see in the women's division. And she knows her quality. And so that's another way. So you need to know your worth. You need to know the quality you bring to the table, and you want to execute that. And that's what she did. When I was watching that fight, I looked like I was watching a really serious, slick, like, welterweight, you know, who's really quick, can move, can punch, you know. And that was probably shown in the next fight when Charlie Edwards fought, you know. And so those are what we can take from these boxers, is that you have to have an element of confidence in boxing, especially it being an individual sport where all the pressure, all the expectations, everything is on you. You can't hide. You know, the moment you hide, you're on the floor. And so confidence is something that you can really look into that sport and really gain lessons. And I've given you 6 athletes here who's taken their confidence levels and they use it to almost boost themselves in different ways. You know, I haven't even mentioned Boatsi actually, who says he has desires to get to the very top. So he has a long-term target, and he's working towards that. You know, I'm sure that I don't know him personally just yet, but I'm sure he's set small targets to achieve as well. But he has a long-term target that he's put out there, and he's working towards it. So you could be short-term that wants to do to work towards particular goals. Lawrence Okoli has goals and desires to be champion by 2020, world champion, you know, or you could have someone who wants to become world champion as the target, and it's a bit more long term. So overall, it's just different ways. There are different ways, rather, that you can, you know, boost your confidence levels and work towards targets and goals and achievements. And we've got these boxers as examples.